First of all, I'll give you a couple of expectations I have for what I think you'll see with Ukrainian foreign policy under Viktor Yanukovych, and then offer some comments about how I think the West, the United States, and Europe should engage with Ukraine. First of all, I think you are going to see less tension between Moscow and Kyiv than has been the case in the last 5 years. I believe even today, President-elect Yanukovych said that he would be willing to look at a negotiation with Russia on extending the presence of the Black Sea Fleet. But I suspect in the end the Russians are going to be disappointed because there are going to be some constants to Ukrainian foreign policy. With regards to Ukraine's relationship with NATO, Ukraine is not going to pursue a membership action plan under President Yanukovych. It's not going to try to take the relationship to a new rhetorical level. But I would expect that there's going to still remain a lot of practical cooperation. And I go back to a conversation I had with a senior Ministry of Defense official back in 2007. This was someone appointed by President Yushchenko. This was when Yanukovych was prime minister. And this official said, you know, Yanukovych doesn't want a membership action plan. He said, but we in the Ministry of Defense have accomplished more in terms of practical day-to-day cooperation with NATO than we did either under Prime Minister Tymoshenko or Prime Minister Yakunurov. We got an exercise plan, we got a strategic airlift agreement. So practical cooperation seemed to be perfectly fine, and I would expect that to continue. The other constant, which I think will be not too pleasing in Moscow, is I think Ukraine will continue to push to deepen its relationship with the European Union. The vehicles being things such as the association agreement, a deep free trade agreement, and then hopefully some kind of arrangement on visa facilitation. Because when you do look at where the Ukrainian foreign policy elite is, and I think a large portion of the population, they see Ukraine's future in Europe, and they see the future as the European Union. And that is going to, I think, still exert a pull on Ukraine, which will be somewhat disconcerting to Moscow. Now, I think the West has leverage with Ukraine, and it seems to me that it would be very useful for the United States and the European Union to figure out how they can work together to send a single common message to Ukraine. And I would suggest that there would be three parts to that message. The first part is I think the West should welcome President Yanukovych and engage him as the democratically elected president of Ukraine. By all accounts, the election was free and fair and democratic. The results reported by the Central Electoral Commission are backed up by all 6 exit polls. But I would stress democracy here, and I think there has to be sort of part of the message needs to be that the reason that you are being welcomed is because you were democratically elected. And the flip side of that is that should there be some move back away from the democratic progress that Ukraine has made, that would affect in a negative way the West's engagement with Ukraine. The second part of the message is that the West should be signaling that the doors to institutions such as the European Union and NATO remain open, that Ukraine has that westward path, and now it really is up to Ukraine to articulate a foreign policy and decide how fast it wants to go down that path and how far it wants to go. I don't think the West can push Ukraine harder towards institutions such as NATO and the European Union than the Ukrainians themselves want to go, and the West ought not to try. But what the West can do and should be doing is signaling that the doors remain open. And the third part of the message comes from the point of view that if a president is going to take hard decisions, the best time to take those hard decisions is at the start of his or her term in office. That President Yanukovych's political capital is going to be as strong as it is now. If you take hard decisions, you do it best at the beginning of the term rather than when you're considering a re-election run. And so I think there should be a third part of the message to President Yanukovych, that the West will judge his seriousness by the seriousness of the policies which he pursues, first and foremost in terms of tackling some of the serious domestic questions that Ukraine has. And I would put at the top of that list a reform of the energy sector, which I think is not just an economic issue, it's not just a corruption issue, but it's an issue of Ukraine's national security. And part of the message should be that, if you're prepared to tackle these problems, you can expect a lot of help from the West. But there should also be a part of that message, which is if you don't tackle those problems, we understand. It's politically hard. We can see why you may not want to do this, and we'll still be friends. But I think the West should be saying that, though, if Ukraine backs away from those hard domestic challenges, then we should be telling Kyiv that Ukraine should not expect that the West will extend itself, for example, by asking the International Monetary Fund to cut Ukraine some slack on loan conditionalities. We can't be in a position where we want Ukraine to succeed more than the Ukrainian leadership. And so I think hopefully this will help motivate the new president to take some decisions which I think will be difficult, but which are going to be necessary if Ukraine moves forward in a logical way.